Thank you, Samir, for being on the show and welcome to the third edition of 24 Hours of Chaos. We all know who you are in the Indian ecosystem and environment. But for our global audience, I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, I'm Samir Pitalwalla. I currently lead games for Google Cloud for Asia Pacific. And prior to this, I was the territory head for Epic Games for Southeast Asia and South Asia. And I've been around this space in some terms of actually engaging with for the last 5 to 6 years, but grew up in the world of 3D in many ways. We used to review computer games for Digit, Score, Computer Gaming World, newspapers back when in my teenage years, and also was amongst the top three Quake 3 players in India. Although I think everybody will debate whether I was amongst the top three from the team, from the folks who are actually among the top. So that's a short bio.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining us today, Samir. So yeah, I think you talked a little bit about, your experience with gaming in the past. But yeah, I'm just curious as to like what, initially drew you towards games and computer graphics. Like where did that start? And, it's great that, you've pursued that and you're now at Google and, leading cloud gaming there for this region. But yeah, just a little, about the history and kind of what that was like in the early days as well for you.
Yeah, actually, I think I've had, it started in the early years with just an interest in computers, and trying to figure out which directory and under command prompt was Prince of Persia hidden under, right? And in school, that's what you'd end up doing. And that kind of remained with me for a long time. It pretty much started with the PC. I didn't really, grow up in a family where we had sort of like consoles and SOCs at that point of time. I did have a 8-bit, but that was pretty much it. And in many ways, then not much happened in that world. I continued with PC until I met my friend Karan Doshi. He was the guy who kind of introduced me to PC gaming in terms of the years of 2000 and 2001. But more importantly, actually introduced me to online forums like Kawabonga and others. And that's really where I realized that, in those early years, most people didn't really have PCs. So I was lucky I had Pentium 386. And, at that point of time, I kind of reached these forums where I found these really cool folks from across India, from Chennai, from Delhi, from Bombay. And it was... this forum in many ways was actually incubated by a company which was trying to build a game, but was trying to find a way that they could attract talent. The same problem we have today as well. And they started the forum as a way to get people to play test the game, but also to hopefully recruit people who are game designers and creators. And over there, it really began to kind of become far wider than just gaming. It was more actually in detail about building your own PCs, finding out, truly in terms of understanding how you actually, engage with the hardware. And that kind of grew into, me kind of building out a career as a game reviewer. But more also importantly, I spent a lot of time reviewing hardware, spending those years reviewing CD-ROMs, DVD-ROM drives, to GPUs, to things like FSB speeds and in motherboards. So it was like hardcore training, and it all happened because of, in many ways, the community that was on that forum. Which, although it came through gaming, it kind of broadened into the world of hardware because everything was interlinked, right? You always were trying to find out ways to squeeze more FPSs out of your hard rig. Sure. And and the community was small back then. You could pretty much, I think it was not more than 1,200 people in India.
Got it. No, I think that's really interesting, and I mean, we've kind of gone from, where it was more of a subculture in India, right? The early days where you mentioned that, you'd even be talking to people in other cities, and it was kind of a world where, everyone knew everyone to some extent. And I think especially in the last couple of years, right, with kind of a boom in, mobile gaming and just accessibility being much higher, with obviously games like, PUBG that have done extremely well in India. I mean, what do you see as the next frontier, right? Specifically because currently we're kind of at the point where we're leveraging, mobile hardware, right? And we know that provides a very limited gaming experience, even in terms of what we've seen in the past, in terms of what consoles and PCs can deliver. But how do you think, some of the upcoming breakthroughs in, cloud rendering and that type of technology, what kind of shift do you see it having here, specifically in this region as well? And how far are we from, kind of seeing another breakout title like PUBG, but that leverages, higher fidelity gaming or something of that sort?
I mean, we've already had seeds of that answer sowed in that question, since it's fairly clear to see that with Diwali, 5G will launch by that time. I think what 4G did to video, 5G will do to games in many ways, because it will allow a democratization of high fidelity games for mobile audiences, predominantly through cloud streaming. The costs are prohibitive, but those will come down, as is the natural order of things with Moore's law. And secondly, the fact is that beyond just the ability to have console level AAA gaming or high-end PC level AAA gaming, no longer being reliant on a bottleneck with the mobile hardware piece. The second piece, which I feel will also kind of change dramatically, is sort of the whole angle of creation, right? Today, consumption will grow, but so will creation. So I don't think we're very far. I think, I mean, in many ways, this is something which, from a timing perspective, there's just so much of infrastructure which is now ready, where I feel, in India in many ways will leapfrog. And this sort of real-time game engine community is a lot like those game communities back then in the early 2000s, right? Where everybody knows each other right now. But I think when you look back 5 years from now, the industry would have grown so massively in terms of sheer number of people, participants, as well as specializations of companies, that we look back as being the simplest era of our times.
Interesting.
Sure.
On that note, I want your commentary on the job and upskilling opportunities in the space, really, because that's what we've been known for, right? Not necessarily, service industry is huge. There have been fewer product-based companies and products and IPs that have come out. It started to happen, but we're still predominantly a service-heavy sector. Do you see any change going about in the coming time?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. Most economies start with copying others, or then trying to deliver services to others, and then eventually build into a product economy. It happened with, the last 15 years, I think, maybe 15 odd years has been, really revelatory in terms of the Indian product ecosystem coming to, in many ways, life, right? Since 2010, you've had probably, I think now there's some 60 unicorns. But if you look at it, the seeds of these companies were sowed in services firms, because the people who ended up getting into product companies came from services firms, where they had been there, done that, or either a part of the BPO firm. I mean, Flipkart is an excellent example, right? Both Vinny and Sachin, in many ways, were actually working for an outpost of Amazon over here before they decided to go ahead and build a consumer-facing product in the form of Flipkart. And we're seeing that happen in gaming as well. More and more people, whether they are the Ubisofts or the Rockstar Games, or the Zynga is an excellent example of a company which has, through its setup over here, actually been a nursery for many of the gaming companies, whether it is Bombay Play or Play Simple, or even Moonfrog. All of those have really come out of the core work that, in terms of the setup that Zynga had during the late to mid 2000s. So I see similarly, it's a similar pattern what happened in gaming, but also what happened in the form of the IT services industry. It's inevitable that it will happen in our world as well.
Got it. No, that's a great thought, right? Yeah. So you did mention game engines in the past, right? And how there is, a growing community there as well, with game developers here in India. But in parallel, we're seeing another very different breakthrough, right, in the world of computer graphics in terms of what, tools like Google's own Imagine, and then like what we're seeing with DALL-E and Midjourney, where AI is, starting to make some really solid contributions, especially in terms of user-generated content now, right, to this ecosystem. And I mean, I personally don't think we're too far away from, a point where we'll see something like, Imagine or DALL-E knocking out animated content as well. But when it comes, like, would love to hear your thoughts on that, and how it could disrupt, gaming as well as, many other factors. Like, I think you've also had a lot of experience with, video as a format and kind of the birth of that format in India in terms of, YouTube and how that propagated. So, and I think like one of the unique things is when you give that power to, creators, right? The common person, where they don't need high-end equipment to create something. So would love to hear your thoughts on, how you think those types of tools will cause disruptions.
So that's a great question. And if you couple of data points, when you look at sort of game development, 60 to 70% of the cost is estimated of game development to just go into asset creation. So that's point number one. Point number two is asset creation is hard to do. The tools are a learning curve, which is not very democratized. Three, tools like Imagine, DALL-E 2, OpenAI, and Midjourney are doing great work for 2D images, but you're already seeing folks who are at the edge of asset creation using these tools to fill in the gaps, such as textures, right? People are using this as plugins to do texturing around the 3D assets. And fourth, if you look at the work that's happening in Nerf, you're already seeing 3D assets being created out of thin air. So it would be logical to think that what Nerf can do today with 3D asset creation can also be paired with what generative media is doing, where you can actually create 3D assets that don't exist, as opposed to training 3D assets right now being created out of, say, while capture on real video, which is what you take the keyframes and do it, as opposed to now being able to generate those images and create a mesh around it. Totally generative, right? So the whole pipeline will end eventually going up generatively. That said, the fact is that a lot of these assets are not currently usable in traditional game pipelines. There is a lot of, but the fact is that you can create them. But maybe Unreal Engine 6 will have Nerf support, right? Who knows? But it seems like that is the directional way it will go to, which in many ways completely changes the idea of what it means to be a 3D artist.
Sure.
Now you don't really need to know the tool. So you don't really need to even have an imagination to be able to sculpt it or to create the asset. You can merely, on a text prompt, at least be able to, generate assets out of thin air. So I think that's going to be truly transformational. And if you think about it, the world of the metaverse, which is my sixth and final point, which is that, the world of video would not have happened without UGC and what YouTube created as tools. And in many ways, those tools for video became democratized because of both the way the editing suite changed and non-linear editing became accessible to anybody on a phone or a regular, device. And secondly, capture tools became very democratized as well, right? The camera came in everybody's hand. This, I think, will be similar sort of animal spirits for the media will be, will be unleashed, because what happened with video will happen to both games, but also to the larger world of 3D. And that's happened. And these five components I spoke to, along with the looking at the sixth one, which is essentially the way video ended up becoming, user generated. These four to five will end up allowing 3D to become user generated as well, but aided by machine and generative media.
Got it. And that's great. No, that's very insightful. And I kind of, we've seen that in your journey also with, Culture Machine, where YouTube in its very nascent stages, right? When you started off with Culture Machine, but really to build a thriving community and, to see so much user-generated content. And I think, there are certain factors like you mentioned, right? Like 4G coming in and, just kind of lifting, the lid off of this and letting the masses really start to consume this kind of content. And even from a content creation standpoint, so I'm really excited to see, what we'll do here in India once we have, access to that next frontier, and whether it's creating the next generation of games or content for the metaverse, I think it's going to be a really exciting space. So to that effect, can you shed some light on some of Google's efforts specifically around this, and also in this region, like what can we here expect, in the next couple of years in terms of tools that may be more accessible to the masses?
So I think, if you look at sort of, I can give you a view from the cloud perspective. I mean, obviously,
Sure, yeah, that'd be helpful.
Places for the gaming community to being around over here. And, it's going to continue to find ways that you can engage with that community in different ways outside of video. But if you look at, cloud itself, it's really about the ability to provide these tools to companies. And, in the larger world of 3D, gaming is one kind of application, as I'm sure you already know. Aman does a whole bunch of work in architecture. You do a bunch of work across various segments, right from geo to, say, simulations. So in that sense, what we are seeing at least is the consumer form of applications over here, which are games. You are increasingly seeing founders and businesses investing heavily in building AA and AAA quality games in India. And that married with sort of, a lot of these come from a background where they've built casual and hyper casual communities around real money. So in many ways, they naturally look at it as saying that, okay, real money is fiat, and how do we actually kind of build these economies out where you can have unlock fandom and unlock engagement, and Web3 becomes an obvious component to use, at least to design these economies. So you're seeing folks who come from the real money gaming world who are building AA, AAA quality games now, but are also finding a way that they can take inspiration from their own journey in real money gaming and marrying it with Web3 economics. So it's kind of created a really interesting talent pool, right? Where I think, people still struggle, as we all know, to hire high quality 3D talent. But, there's plenty of good talent when it comes to designing these Web3 economies out. And there's an aspiration to work with global talent today who can help them build these applications. So what we are doing at Google is finding ways that we can enable these Web3 economies using a lot of what GCP brings to the table, right from node scalings to, finding a way that we can, have high quality security. And second is on the 3D aspect, a lot of these things we're talking about Nerf as well as, generative media. Google has in many ways contributed publicly to large amounts of pioneering research in that space. And some of that is what we're bringing to work with certain key clients in terms of finding a way that we can bring a lot of this cool tech, which is at the edges of what's possible in that world of 3D, and bring it to companies like our folks over here. So it's true, both on the crypto side of it and more on the blockchain side of it, and also on the generative media side of it.
Great. So, Samir, are there any shout outs you'd like to, give to any sort of studios or games that have really impressed you, specifically something coming out of this region, this time zone?
I mean, I'm a big fan of the work you guys both do, right? Both Decor as well as Green Brain. I think in many ways, you're at the center of the community and have been able to put joint dots together. And as leaders in the space, I think it's been heartening to see how you have been able to, in this event for that matter. And other than that, I think there are plenty of folks. I think all the great work the team at, Arvind and team are doing at Epic. I think those folks have, in many ways seen that journey right from Unity to now Unreal. But yeah, I think it's a limited set of folks who are doing really good work. And I think you both are definitely at the center of it. So thank you for setting this up and inviting me, and also doing this event and taking out your time to help push this industry forward.
Yeah, our pleasure to have you here, Samir. Do you have any closing thoughts, notes, anything before you sign off?
I think the world of 3D sometimes gets bottled into, for folks on the outside, into the world of gaming. And gaming is just one aspect of the larger world of cool stuff that you can do in 3D and simulation in general. I think our whole world is in many ways simulated between our 2 years. And, this world of what's coming forward will be computationally an order of magnitude higher than what we have seen so far. But it will also be far more engaging and far more visceral. So I think I'm looking forward to finding a way to be a part of this ecosystem, and I think it's the exciting times are far ahead, and it's just getting started.